me just see. Okay, so that sounds perfect now. It's a lovely day. It's okay. So we have some guests who is joining now. That's great. Lovely. We are seeing people coming. And wow, sounds
Oh,
perfect now.
hang on.
It's a I think I'm getting an echo somewhere.
Yeah, I'm getting an echo from
We
mine.
have Okay, no problem. So I'm getting the echo from the guest who has joined today. Lovely, my friends. So welcome back, my friends. Welcome to Saudi Arabia Microsoft Excel Power Platform Meetup. It's one place and infinite solution where we connect, share, and learn together. And this meetup is a place, I love, when people are joining from all over the globe. So do let me know in the chat from where you're joining, and that would be really lovely to know. So, just a quick introduction about myself. Usually, what I talk about, if you don't know me, you're joining for the first time. I'm a Microsoft MVP in Saudi Arabia, and I'm an NCD and an MIE and Office Master, a YouTuber, blogger, and I run this meetup, Saudi Arabia Microsoft Excel Power Platform. My mission and my passion is, to provide easier solution to the community and equally gain knowledge from the lovely friends who are over here. So I've been hosting the meetup regularly, and the last year means, in fact, continuing this year from 2024, 2025, I have been hosting meetup focusing on women on tech, who are women in tech. So it's my pleasure, that one of our guests today who is here, so she is also one of the member who is women in tech for this year, and it's my privilege, that to have such great women coming on Saudi Arabia Power Platform Meetup and talking about the technology. So it was really great, and I really appreciate all of them. So coming now, the guest who I have on the hot seat on the other end in sitting in London, my friends Sue. So Sue and I met in Bulgaria. It was first time when we met. It was in Bulgaria, and
Mm.
from that time I know Sue, and we have been always been chatting on sometime on LinkedIn, and we exchange knowledge, and that's how we connect people. And just like to share one small memory with Sue, and I think Sue, when she sees, she will remember this.
You look younger then. That was pre-COVID.
So this was a picture of me and Sue. We have this. I remember very well when Ken
Mm.
was giving the master class, and you have to leave little early because you need to catch your flight. And we
Just
quickly took a
made it.
picture that time. And this was the
Mm.
only picture I have with you.
I think it was my first conference that I went to, which is where I met
Yes,
you and Alan Murray.
yes,
So yeah, it was the first one I'd been to abroad. So for me, Bulgaria is quite a way. And yeah, it was exciting. A bit nervous, but quite exciting.
yes. So I managed to find this picture, today, and I thought I'll just share it with all of you.
Oh, thank you,
So this
Faraz. That's
great,
lovely. Ken was brilliant, wasn't he? We sat through Ken's course and it was absolutely brilliant.
great, yeah. Ken is awesome. So, and we have some upcoming events which is there. So make sure you mark your calendar. Miss Laura is going to join, and she's going to talk about Excel Uncharted, data visualization. And I'm planning to have an in-person event. I will be soon letting you know the dates and timing, end of the March, because I'm just getting to confirm about the venue. And the most important thing, please note the time. The timing will be in the evening time, be late evening, 10:30 p.m. So if you're planning to join, it would be in the late evening. And as usual, if somebody is there who would like to talk and share their knowledge on this meetup group, I always encourage them to please feel free to connect with me, write me back on my um, email address or LinkedIn or anywhere. You can just connect with me and say, hi, Darfraz, I would like to just talk, and we can make sure that we arrange something, and we can have you on the meetup. Lovely. So let's go to the next slide we have. And just to take care, just to have a better experience, if you are having make sure that if you have any questions, you can just mention Q and put it in the chat, or when Sue will look on the chat, she'll be able to reply to you. And also to make note that this session is live streamed and recorded, and it will be available on the YouTube/Excel Exciting channel. So I would like to now welcome my friend finally again, Sue. She is a data analyst and business owner and she's done a specialization in Power BI, Excel, and R and Python with Microsoft Fabric, And she also have a very strong and advanced data analytics, forecasting, and visualization, particularly in the areas with demographic trends and financial metrics. And today, with this passion, she's coming. And what I know that, so that you are fitness, you are going into more into fitness, right? I see a lot of your marathons pictures,
Yeah.
you're posting.
Yeah,
So,
I'm a very passionate runner. I've just qualified for hopefully Boston Marathon, and I'm running Chicago in October.
wow,
And I've just come back from Napa Valley where I ran the marathon there in 3:49. So yeah, I love it.
great. So now I will leave the floor to the guest today. So please feel free to take the stage and let us know about yourself more in detail and what you're going to present to for us for today.
Okay, no problem. Thank you for us, and thank you for sharing the picture with me. That brought back some fabulous memories. And going to conferences and learning from other people is just such a great way to actually to learn and to network. And as Faraz said, I'm a very passionate runner. And when I went to Napa Valley, I stayed with a friend of ours in the community, in the data community that I've met. So all sorts of things can happen from meeting up and getting to know each other. So I get very bored if you don't talk to me. So any questions that you have, please pop them in the chat. I think you're snoozing, or you will get so much more out of me if you stop me and ask for questions, other than me just going through the screen. So it's up to you. Questions, chat, make the most of the time, and we can have a really good session, interactive session. So as Farah said, my name's Sue. I work as an independent Power BI developer. My LinkedIn is up there, so please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn and say hello. I run my own business, and time is hugely important to me because I bill by time. I have to manage running life, family, work, everything. So I don't like doing things unnecessarily. Um, I really enjoy everything that I do, really. Life is too short, so it's important to make sure that you enjoy everything that you do, in my opinion. I am a data platform MVP. I was awarded it last year, much to my amazement, and it's great because it's given me more opportunities. That's my email address. And I also, like Faraz, I run a meetup group, Devon and Cornwall. The link is there. We meet every week and have an hour-long session by someone where we just virtually chat and listen and learn. This Tuesday, we had Mark Proctor taking us through Office Automate and Office scripts. And it was absolutely fascinating because there's so much to learn. Primarily, I work as a data engineer. So although I'm in Power BI a huge amount, what I tend to do is I use all of the solutions possible to ensure that the data that the businesses I work for is transformed and ingested into a certain format that everybody can use. More and more frequently, I've been delving into Python. Just be interesting to know if any of you have used Python before. If you pop it into the chat, that would give me a great idea as to you know, how, you know, the level to which that I'm chatting. Python is a fabulous tool that allows you to do many things, but one of the things that allows you to do is to do things like this within Fabric and within Power BI, within semantic models, and more in Excel. Brilliant. So great for us. Started working with Excel in Python. I haven't used it a huge amount. I like you, I've brought it in, I've created some visuals and I've played with it, but the language is the same, whether you use it in Fabric, whether you use it in Excel, whether you use it in Google Colab or Visual Studio Code, the syntax and frame and structure of the language is the same. So what I'm intending to show you is how you can actually use Python within Microsoft Fabric. Has anyone started using Fabric? I know primarily you're an Excel group, but within the Power BI environment, we have a Power BI, we call it Power BI service, which enables people to access our reports and many other things through the web. So within here, we have this, we have these workspaces. Is this familiar to people? Workspaces and how you work within Power BI. So when you create reports within Power BI, you make the reports on your desktop and then you publish them to the service so that you can then share them with other people. So for an example, as Farah suggested, I'm, you know, a very avid runner. So this is an example of a report that I might have created, well, that I did create in my desktop and then published it to Power BI desktop, and it shows me all the different level of activities, you know, what's the difference, where have I run, you know, how many per month, and you can flip through, and so it gives us a huge amount of data that we have within a report in Power BI. Now, whilst Power BI and Power BI Service is fabulous as a modeling technique, what we're finding is, or what Microsoft have found more and more, is that data is coming in from all sorts of places. And the aim within Fabric is to allow people to ingest data from many different sources. And whilst Power Query is absolutely fantastic for bringing in many different data sources and allowing us to use it, there is a need to have different methods of bringing in and ingesting data into your model to allow you to build reports. And Python is one way that allows us to do this. So what is Python? And let me just take you through. Hopefully you've seen this before and you can understand what this is. This is a Power BI workspace. And within this workspace, you can create workspaces quite easily by clicking on workspace, and we can create a workspace. So we can call it test user group, we can describe it and we can apply it. And then we have a workspace, which is a bit like a folder within your online Power BI service. And then within that folder, what we can do is we can create a lakehouse. So what do I mean by a lakehouse? So here, a lakehouse is basically it's a place that you can store data. So you'll hear the terms lakehouse and data warehouse. The lakehouse basically allows you to store any type of data. It's not structured. You can just pop anything in there. And if you're going to start to use Python within Microsoft Fabric, you need a place to store the data that you're going to use within your notebooks. So we have in here a lakehouse. And then once we have a lakehouse, we can create a notebook. So we can create a notebook in Jupyter. So we tend to use Jupyter notebooks, and we've got a notebook here. So that notebook, and I find this is the easiest way to get started when you're using Python within Fabric. If you haven't got Fabric yet, you can apply and you can get a trial license, and it usually lasts for about 60 days. So we've got our nice Jupyter notebook here, and we can then, but obviously you need files. So within your Lakehouse, you can add files. So if I click on files, you can click here and you can upload. So you can upload the files or a folder, and that will then take you to your, it'll take you to your directory. So in the great interest of trying to get this done, so to give you some information, I've got some that I've created earlier. So in here, we have, I'm going back to my other workspace, we've got a Python introduction workspace. So it looks a little bit different, but it's exactly the same as I shared with you before. We've created a workspace, we've called it Python Introduction. It has this Fabric content, so it's set up to allow us to use Fabric objects within it. And I'm using a trial license, which is here, so that's 58 days. Sorry, lots of chatting. So I've created a notebook, and I've created a lakehouse. So this is my lakehouse here, and I've just, instead of calling it test, I've called it Python introduction. And you can see I've got some files in here. Now, what I want to do is, and you can use these buttons on the left to take you back and forth. So I'll go back into my warehouse here. I'm just going to close these by pressing here, because I don't want to keep them. I don't want to confuse things. And hopefully you should all be able to see this okay. So we've got our workspace, we've got our lakehouse, and you'll see I've got this introduction to Python. And the introduction to Python is a Jupyter notebook that I showed you how to open before. And the only difference with this is I've started to use it. So I'll start to show you how I use it and what you can do within notebooks. And notebooks are great because they allow you to flip between code and text. So this cell here, and they're basically a bunch of cells. And within each cell, you can either run code or you can write text. And it's using, so if I click here and just press run, I just want to run this cell just to get this one started so that you can see where we get started with this. And I just want to, let's click run all to start with. So what we click when we click run all is we're setting the engine up. We're saying, okay, we're getting ready to start. I want you to start working, and then it starts our Spark session, which is underneath here. And you can see it's running through and it's starting to run the cells. It's going to stop shortly because I've got an error in there to show you how to manage errors. So this is, and if we click at it here and click edit, this is a Markdown. So I don't know if you've heard of Markdown before, but Markdown is a common way that you can actually format and write text within notebooks and within many other different types of software. And you can, instead of having it as boring text, what you can do is you can use the hashtags to say, okay, one hashtag, this is my title, and you can put nice little images in it. So you can structure and make it easy. And this is really useful for when you are perhaps working with someone else, or when you're trying to understand and remind yourself when you go back to your code, what it is that you've done. So it's very similar to comments, but in a much more user-friendly method. So to start, you click on add a cell. It's going to be Markdown. So I can click here, convert to Markdown. And then within here, I can just double click and I can put, hello, Faraz, how are you? So we can start to just write text, etc. And we can make it big, small, and actually make it a bit more interactive. So instead of just doing So what exactly is Microsoft Fabric and why use Python with it? So Microsoft Fabric, as I mentioned at the beginning, is a way of which you it's basically an infrastructure in which you can use Power BI, but you can also bring in different types of data from lake houses, from warehouses. We have things like real-time intelligence. So instead of it just being purely about Power BI, it's a big infrastructure that allows us to use many types of data, bringing it in, transforming it, whether we use it for data science or data analytics. We create models, and Python is basically a tool that enables us to do pretty much anything with our data once we've got it into a central repository. And once the data is stored in a central place, what it enables us to do is to manage security. It enables us to manage who has access to what, and it makes it less complex because everything is in one place. So hopefully, why use Python? Because Python gives you a huge amount of versatility, as you'll see as I run through this. So hopefully that answers your questions a little bit. So once we start bringing in our Python basics in here, we're going to write a comment. So the first thing that you might want to do is you might want to comment out your code. So hashtag allows you to write a comment, and you'll see that this isn't visualized. It allows you to enter data in your cell, perhaps the same as you might do in Power Query. But what it actually allows you to do then is to print and to keep comments to yourself rather than visualizing it. Oh, I see Christy's joined the chat. Hey, Christy. So once we press print, we get hello world, and this comes out with hello world. And also it's quite useful to be able to actually format our code so that we can add different lines. So this is talking about markdown and then allowing you to show how you can actually structure your code. If you're going to use markdown, this is a really useful link, and I'll give you a link to my GitHub repository, Faraz, so you can share it with your members so that your members can see it. So let's go into what actually you would start using Python for and how it's structured. So you can use this within Excel. Everything that I'm showing you now within a Python notebook in Fabric, forget the fact if you're not in Fabric, this is what you can use within Excel using Python in Excel. And Python gives you the opportunity to be more flexible and do so much more with your code. So in the same way as we use Power Query and we use VBA and we might use SQL or T-SQL, there is a certain structure that we might use to write our code. So I'm going to go through now in the next 10 minutes, 15 minutes, how we structure and write Python so that you'll feel comfortable once you create a data frame in Excel or whatever you use Excel for, you'll understand the syntax behind it. Or if you're using ChatGPT or Copilot, it just helps you understand how it's read and how to alter things. So our if statements are like this. So this makes pretty much good sense. If 5 is greater than 2, print. And our print, we have our brackets, and then we have our speech colon. So here, this is correct. And so it'll say this is correct. The important thing to note is that spacing is important within Python. If, for example, I bring this here and press print, it won't work. So, but the error messages are quite nice. It shows you. So basically, it's expecting it to have a structure similar to this, where you can actually print. This is great, but it's quite basic. Then here we can use an if and an else. So we can say if 5 is greater than 6, print yes. If it's not, print no. So you can see the if and else structure. If else, print if, else no. And again, it's formatted correctly. And the lovely thing about using Python here is the Excel team have done a really great job in actually adding in some comments and notes for you so that you can understand what it is you're doing. So we're going to say if 5 is greater than 6, print yes, else print no. And you can see the results underneath your query. So we might want to actually start applying variables to our code. We might want to say it could be this cell or it could be this thing. So we can actually start to question on WhatsApp, is Python in Fabric similar to, yes, absolutely. Similar to Python and Jupyter Notebooks. Yes, it is. So Python is the coding language, and the way that we're using it within Fabric is using a Jupyter Notebook. So yeah, absolutely the same thing. There is a difference to what you can do within Fabric as opposed to what you can do if you were using a Jupyter Notebook, perhaps in Anaconda, or due to the fact that it's within the Fabric environment, but not a huge amount. So yes, thank you for the questions. It's nice to know you're out there. So variables. A variable is created the moment you assign a value to it. So it's the same as a named range in Excel. You know, that's the same as a variable. In I always try and make things a little bit more relatable. So, you know, we've got our different conditions here, which are again very similar if you use Power Query. It's like a step, or we can use a variable within Power Query. So what we might say is we might define our variables here, so that if we then want to actually change our variables, it then changes within our code. So the same way we might pick a cell and make it absolute, and then once we change that cell, it'll change throughout the rest of our code. This is similar to having a variable within Python. So if I was going to change this to 12, you'll see here the results will change. So yes, duh. So it's just a nice way that you can actually change things and then your code, but you can see the structure. It's an if and it's an else, and then from that we've got our indentation. Now, things are not always 1 and 0. Sometimes we have an elif in there as well. So we might have a if it's this, or else it's this, or if this. And within Python, we have elif. And I think this is different from Power Query. We saw if, then here it's if, elif, else. So we've defined our two variables, we've given them a value, and then within that value, we're printing off what it is. So, and it's quite nice. You can put your little notes in it. So you can see here, it's greater than 15, the number's equal to, print. So you can put notes and explanations in yourself. So we've got a hashtag N, so we're adding in. So we're printing. So whatever we put in here, the result will come out here. So if we change this to 18, you'll see this will change. So the number is less than the threshold. We've got a new line here. We've got a note. We've got some equals, just making it looking pretty, but just being aware of the spacing. So these are all part of a condition. Then once this condition is finished, it prints this, and then it prints this. So the spacing of the code, Telegram question, what performance consider? It depends. It depends what data you're pulling in, but generally Python is very efficient. So it depends where you're pulling the data from, what you're pulling it from. But when you're using big data, instead of using pandas, you've got the opportunity to use Spark. If you're into massive data, instead of using Spark, you've got Polar. So it's more performant than Power Query when you're looking at data, but of course it's only as efficient as the code that you write. So yeah, and what you're asking it to do. So that's quite a broad question, Telegram question. So hopefully that gives you some indications, but I'd need more detail to be more specific. But it depends upon your code, it depends what you're pulling in, but it is designed to handle big data, big data. And this is why we use it. But it does, and also it depends upon your source data, where you're pulling it from and what you're asking it to do. But it's quick. So from Python, so on here, so we've got our if, our elif, we've got our actual indentation sorted out, and that's one of our basic programming constructs, right? But where Python is brilliant is it has it in libraries. So within our libraries, I'm bringing in a display module from the IPython library. And I'm going to go into libraries in more depth, but libraries are the thing that gives Python its superpower. So in the same way within Excel, you might have functions for your arithmetic, or you might have functions for your financial modules. We have different modules within libraries within Python. So we don't just use it for data, you can use it for building websites, you can use it for automating scripts, you can use it for system tools. It's a hugely versatile language. So what I've brought in here is a library called IPython, and I'm asking it to import a display so I can use HTML language. So I'm using HTML within Python. So here I'm just saying display in HTML, the note of use spacing, and you can see the way I've put the font in, I've aligned the text, I've popped some background colors in there. And it basically can make your notebooks really pop when you're trying to explain things to someone, or comments, if it's if it's a language or a notebook, to explain how your documentation or your library is put together. So we've done our ifs, we've done our elifs, we've done our elses, we've done our functions, we've talked about commenting. So now let's talk about functions. So we're moving on from where we created a piece of script and then we did our if. Now we're saying, well, this might be something we want to use all the time. And this is where we start to create functions. So this function, what we're doing is we're called it comparing values. So we're comparing two values. And you'll note here, we've got the 3 speech marks here and here, which allows us to actually write our text, our purpose, our reason. This code is written for this reason. So when we print it, we can say here, and we can actually call our function here by calling compare values 10, 5. So this one, you can see I've defined my code here, compare values, and then in the next cell, when I play it, it will then actually, I don't need to call the function again because I've created the function. And this is very basic. Can we connect Fabric directly with Excel using Python is one of the questions. You can connect directly to Fabric with Excel using data flows or semantic model. Python is, and actually, yes, you can pull in Excel files using Fabric in Python, and I'll show you that in a little bit. So the answer is yes. Yeah, you can. And you can pull from Excel. You can use Fabric as well. So you can pull from Fabric into Excel, and you can pull from Fabric from Excel using Python in different methods. So they're hugely interchangeable. It's really cool, actually. So lists and a for loop. Like the questions, thank you. Keep them coming. So lists and a for loop. So the other thing we want to then think about is we've done our if statements, next thing for or while, where we start to actually build up our coding semantics. So in here, within lists and NumPy, I've put a little explanation. So I do my little play. And what it will do is it tells you, in Python, a list is an ordered collection of elements. So within a list, you can store many different things, numbers, strings, or other objects. They can be very flexible in that you can hold everything, but NumPy is a library in the same way that I showed you that IPython enables you to perhaps visualize your code using HTML. NumPy is a library, and it stands for numerical Python, which basically allows you to do super, super fast numerical operations over an array. So it's because it's specifically designed and programmed to do that, it's lightning fast. So what we tend to do is when we start working with lists in Python, most of our data that we pull in is in a tabular format. So it's generally in a list format. We have arrays, so we have one line of data after another that is joined within tables. So in here, this will be an original list, and we use it using the square brackets. So in the same as we can do within Power Query, where we can do our little speech marks to pull in data, or curly brackets. So NumPy is really important within data modeling, and it sits behind most of the libraries that we use within the data modeling side, or the languages everything that we pull in using pandas and NumPy. So to import a language, this is the common phrase: import NumPy as MP. And you have to pull your language in, you have to pull your library in so that you can use it. If you don't import it in, then you can't use it because you have to call it in. So we'll say import NumPy as MP, and then we've actually called, so this is similar to us creating a variable. So our variable, surprisingly, is called MP underscore array. And that goes back to where we called our A and B different numbers. And we're saying our array is called mp.array called numbers. So, and we defined numbers up here as a list. So numbers equals this. We did a for loop originally to iterate over it. So again, you can see the spacing here. And we're saying for number in numbers. And all this means is that it's going through. So this is a number, this is a number, this is a number, this is a number. And it's saying for each item in this list, I want you to create another list where it's doubled. So it then will iterate through, and it'll show that each number is doubled. The other thing, just to show you and point out, is this F, this fast strings, I'm pretty sure it's called. But quite often what you have to do within different programming languages, you have to specify what, if you're trying to print out a letter with a number, you might have to say format the number as text, or format the text as a number, so you have to make sure the two data types are the same, and to be very specific about how you merge them together if they're different data types. This is actually really incredibly clever, because all you have to do is put the F in front of it and put whatever your variable is in the curly brackets, and then you don't have to worry about text. The F tells Python that this, forget the text, I want it printed as a string. So, and it doesn't matter what data type is in here, it prints it as a string. So it will then go through each item in the list, then create another item, and then it will print it. So you've got doubled is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Now we can do exactly the same thing, but instead of iterating through with a for loop like that, which can be a little bit more time consuming, especially if you've got lots of data, what you can do is you can create an array. So we've got an array, which is a single column of data. And we've said it's this is our numbers variable. And then I simply want you to go through each one and double it by 2. So the same in Power Query, where you create a new column and you do times by 2. So this is nice and efficient, and it's a way that we can do it. So, and when you've got millions or billions of rows of data, this makes it very straightforward and simple for you to be able to do this. So that was a for statement. What we might actually want to do is then to do a while statement. So we can initialize a variable and we can say this counter is 5. And whilst this counter equals 5, I want you to loop through whilst it's bigger than 0. And once it gets to 0, then stop. So we're saying, well, the counter is greater than 0, print countdown, and then decrement the counter. So the minus equals means go through, print down 5, then take 1 off. Is that greater than 0? Yes, 4 is greater than 0. Then continue, take 1 off. And then you say 3. Is it greater than 0? Yes, take 1 off. And it will go on till it gets to 1. And then once you take 1 equals 0, is it greater than 0? No. So stop. So this stops, and then you print lift off. So it's a way that you can actually iterate over an array or over something until a certain point and then stop and move on. So that's a way to actually, when you start thinking about, you might want to be asking, pull out the people's ages where they're over 20. So you can say, whilst the age is over 20, do this. Or so it's a way that you can apply this logic to do something to something for a certain period or a certain variable that you assign. The other thing that you can do is you can do it the other way. So you can start with a 0 and you can tell it when to stop. So we can go down, we can go up, but the principles are the same. So number equals 0. While it's true, then keep going. So is number greater than equal to 5? Well, when we get to 5, then yes, it is. But here it will keep going. It will keep going until it stops at 5. Next question, can Python scripts in Fabric send notifications or emails automatically? So we have pipelines in Fabric. So what you can do is you can run a Python script to do something. Say you might say, right, calculate, pull in my data or attach to my database, work out what people's monthly sales are. If sales drop between a certain point, then do this. And then you can say, once that happens, use a pipeline to actually then send an email. So yes, you can send notifications or emails automatically through using pipelines. That's how I would tend to do it. I think. I'm pretty sure, yes. So you can use a Python script to go through your data, work out what's happening with it, and then you could pop it into a pipeline in Fabric, and then you can then say, whilst this happens, do this and this and this. But I'm sure there will be a library within Python that allows you to send it through, but I would probably do it using a pipeline. So check if a counter is an integer. So this is what we're doing now. So we've done our variables, we've created functions, we've done our if statements, we've done our else statements, we've looked at for loops, while loops. Now what we want to do is we want to say, well, let's build in some error checking. How secure is my Python code when running in Fabric pipeline? Secure. It's all surrounded by the Azure and Microsoft Entra, which was Azure Active Directory. So it sits within the boundaries of Microsoft, and that's the great thing about having all of your data and your ingestion happening in one place. It's all within this fabric, and the only way that you can access it is if you have a license or you give people access, and that license is assigned by people being users in your tenant, or if you decide to have guest users, it's all set up and you can really define security very clearly. No limits as far as I'm aware. But yeah, it's built for big data. So we have Azure Spark specifically for big data, which brings in nodes of data from distributed nodes from all over the place. So yeah, it's designed specifically for big data. And that's the interesting thing is you can use pandas, which is a language to a library to allow you to work on smaller data, which is still considerable, big, But if you're using lots and lots of billions of rows of data, then you've got the way to bring in Azure Spark, which brings it in from many different nodes. And if you're dealing with even bigger data, then there's Polar.s, which is again massive. So no limits as far as I'm aware. Well, none that I've heard of as yet. So check if is a counter is an integer, and there's also different methods that you can use perhaps at your data source to decide what you want to bring in. Do you want to use incremental refresh? Do you want to only bring in data each day? Only data that's uploaded or that's changed. So because we've got this flexibility of having different sources that we can bring in, we can only bring in what we need to bring in if it's billions and billions of rows. But no, I haven't seen any limits. So in this error checking here, check if a counter is an integer and negative. So this is what I'm doing. I'm just saying basically if it's an integer or if it's negative, then it's not going to work. So on here, I've created that. Now, this is the bit I want to draw your attention to. So if it's not, so we're saying if it isn't this, if it's not an integer, or it's smaller than 0, and you can tell it what type of error to raise. So this is a value error. This is saying the value isn't correct. And when you start playing within Python or using Python, you'll see you get lots of error messages. And it'll tell you what type of error message it is. And you can actually paste those error messages into ChatGPT or Copilot. And those error messages help us understand what the problem is. So when we actually have to then go back and fix it. So we can create our own, or they're generated by the machine itself. So we say it must be an integer and it must be non-negative. So here it's stopped. It's telling us, it has to be an integer, it has to be non-negative, which is why it won't work. So this is just another example of we're pulling in our loop, we're importing in IPython that I mentioned before, and then we're saying when it stops, you might want it to jump out if you want it to jump out. I'm not saying you necessarily would, but it gives you an example of how you can actually make your notebooks explain what's happening with your code. So as I mentioned before, NumPy is great for your array handling, your one-dimensional array handling. And the reason being is that it's basically it's so much more efficient. It's specifically designed for this, and it integrates with pandas, matplotlib, and scikit-learn. So these are 3 more libraries that we use frequently when we're ingesting and transforming data. So pandas, you will hear a lot of. If you're starting to use Python with data, you'll hear pandas. Pandas uses NumPy in the back. It's basically built into it, and it supports pandas. Matplotlib is brilliant for visualization, and scikit-learn is brilliant for machine learning. So, when we want to pull in our data, ingest it at source, and then try and work out some actual use case scenarios as to what's happening and run all sorts of experiments, then that's when you would use your scikit-learn. So key features of pandas. Pandas is brilliant for creating data frames. So if we click here, and in the same way we imported NumPy as MP, we import pandas as PD. We've created a data frame. For data frame, think table. We've created a table. So we have a table here, and we've created our data frame here. So we've got our data, and we've got we've typed it in, and this creates a data frame with 2 columns, which is basically NumPy under the head. And then we create our data structure that we've created here from a dictionary. So dictionary is but a dictionary can handle all sorts of things. It can handle objects of lists, and it has a key and a value. So our key is temperature, and that's our values, and that's our other key, and it's a value of lists. And then what we do is we say pd.dataframe. So within pandas, we're saying create a data frame from this dictionary. And we've called it df weather. So once we pull it in, we say, okay, print df weather. And now we've got this nice object, which is a pandas data frame. Once it's a pandas data frame, then we can use all of the tools that are associated with pandas with a data frame. So this is when, for us, when you pull your data into Excel and you've created a data frame, you've got a pandas data frame, and now you can start to do all sorts of things. So we can create a new temperature, and you can see the way that I've said, right, okay, we collect a new column, we call it df temperature, and it's based on, because here we've got Celsius, I want the Fahrenheit, so I'm using the Celsius, then I'm timesing by 9/5 and plus 22. And that basically is just an array, it's a column. So it's creating a new column based on the old column, and we were overwriting our original data frame. So we have here a new column. We can actually also filter. So, and you see the way that I've called it a different name. What it means then is that we can actually, we've got two data frames now. So we've got DF weather, and then we've got high humidity. So you can keep, and you can keep your original data frame, although it's, your source data isn't changed. But if you're doing an experiment and you want to pull off perhaps sales from 2024, you can create a new data frame for 2024, but your existing data frame remains the same. And that's quite useful if you're actually exploring or ingesting or looking at different data. What's always useful is understanding how to bring data in and out. So it's great having this data here, and I'm showing you, and I've created a data frame by creating a list. But what's incredibly useful is to pull in data from CSVs or Excel or JSON or Parquet or SQL. So we have a method that we can read the data in, but then we have a method that we can save the data. And generally what happens is you will pull the data in, do a huge series of transformations to it, and then save it as something else. And you would set up a pipeline to, this might run every day, attach to your database, do this, this, and this, save to this. So it's an automated way of ingesting in data from one source, making the transformations which are paid automatically, and then saving it to a file. Is a question from Telegram is Python in Fabric faster than running Python locally on my computer? Huge amount of variables there, Telegram, difficult to answer. So it depends on the speed of your PC, the type of install of Python you have, what your internet connection's like. So who knows? I would imagine yes, but there are many, many different variables there that need consideration. So I'm deliberately not using that it depends. I'm telling you what are the variables and then what changes it. So here I've changed my df weather to a file. So if I was to change this to whereas and save it, then what you see when you get to the lake house and we click on files, and we can see it's there. So that then is in your lake house. And you can then access that lake house from here. You can download one lake, which is then connected. So you've got an install, a file management install of one lake sat on your machine if you want to access it outside of the Fabric environment. So, and we can also import in data. So here we've got a HR file.csv. We can run that, and that is coming, and we can then pull that into our lakehouse. So straight away we've imported pandas. We can read HR file.csv with our delimiter, and then we can display it because we're using pandas, we're reading in a CSV, and we're setting it as a data frame. We can actually just pull and drop the data in from our files. So in the same way here, we can just pull and drop the data in, and you'll see, let's scroll down, we should just be able to drag and drop Faraz in here. This will be when it doesn't work for me. But yeah, load data and pandas. And then it will come in and it'll do the code for us. So go there to delete your cell. You can come up here and you can press delete. Now, once you've got data pulled in, it's great that you can use all of these things, but once you've actually got a data frame, you'll see you've got this code called Data Wrangler, and Data Wrangler is similar to, I think it's like Power Query. So it says, which data frame do you want to use? So we'll use this data frame. And it's a lovely GUI which allows you to run code without having to write a single thing of Panda yourself. So you might say, right, okay, duplicate rows within my data. I don't want any duplicate. I've got 0.1% for duplicate rows. So you can look on here and you can say, right, drop duplicate rows. And you can press apply. And it starts to write the code for you. So you can say here, we've got drop duplicate rows. So it's df.drop duplicates, and you see the duplicates has gone. So we might also say if missing values, drop the missing values. And I wouldn't suggest doing this unless you're happy with it. And so we can say missing values. We've got missing in last elevation. We've got missing in satisfaction. So you can say, right, satisfaction, last evaluation, and you can drop those rows with missing values. So it's a way that you can actually then create code without having to understand the Python or having to write it freehand. Then when you add this code to your notebook, it will add the code to your notebook for you. And here you can see drop duplicates, replace missing values, return it. So going back to what we talked about at the beginning, we've created a function, we've applied it to our data frame, and within here, we've used pandas to actually clean our data, and we've created a new variable called clean. So you can see here, it's gone through, and it's a really nice, easy way to actually to do this. So let's just delete that for now. And you can see how you can delete your data frame. So it allows you, it's really useful because it allows you to actually clean through your data without having to know the code straight away. But you do need to understand it. The brilliant thing about this is that you can see the way that this will happen to any data frame or any data frame that is called DF. So it's easy to actually have data that is then rerunnable code, reusable code. Once you've defined what your transformation, your extraction logic is, and reducing duplicates, reducing this, you can have one script that will automate and do it all of the time for you. So it's set up to structure. So I'm just going to go for another 10 minutes because we started at 15:15. So I'll finish about 15:15 if you're ready for a break in a moment. Or a walk or something. We'll finish in about 10 minutes. So here, df.head, that shows us the first 5 rows of our data. So if you pull something in and you want to see just what the full 5 rows, df.tail, any ideas what this is going to do? Anyone still out there? What's df.tail do? If head shows us the top, what's tail going to do? It is so powerful, Christy. So df.tail will show us the end. We can ask it to display a nicely formatted table. So we've got all of these different things that we can do with our data, which allows us to show what our data does. We can print random. We can actually get thank you, Christian. We can get random rows. We can get some concise summary of our data. So on here, it can tell us, and this is really useful, our descriptive, this gives us an idea of actually, what's our data made up from, how many rows are null, what data type are they, so what's the memory usage? So it gives us an indication of our data type, and then we can actually, just with one piece of code, we can actually then get some descriptive statistics. So we can actually, the general things that you see at the top of the Power Query, show us what the number is in the table, what the mean is, what the standard deviation, all of these different descriptive statistics. Yeah, there are a few libraries that aren't supported within Fabric. Tkinter is one of them, which is a way that you can actually build a menu that will drop up. I couldn't get that to work in it. But generally, the type of things I couldn't get to work are not the things I would possibly use for data engineering. They would be more for interaction. It's not that you can't necessarily interact and get the user to input something, whereas in some code you can, but I wouldn't do that within this environment anyway. So we can print our list of columns, we can put our columns as a list, we can print column names. So you can see the way we can sort columns, we can change them to proper case, and we can do all sorts of things like this that will run all of our code. And because I've written it, it'll just flip through now and it'll run it all for me because it's set up to do that. So again, it goes back to this reusability. You pull in a data set, and it might be you do this every day to a specific data set that you pull in from your software that you use for your business. In the same way you'd run Power Query and refresh it every day or every hour or whatever you want to do, you have this same logic that you can then run through a pipeline each time. So we can run through and see all of our different pipelines. And all sorts of things, anything you might want to think about as to filtering, anything that you can do with Power Query, you can do with Python, plus many more things. So we're going through, we're printing differences in rows, and it really comes to its own where you can actually compare different data sets and you can ask it to show you different things. One of the examples I've done is I've looked at my Garmin data and said, compare it. When you're going in to run a race, you get a lot of it is headspace. You think, am I fit enough? Am I where I was when I was last time? So you can say, right, show me. I had it to show me where I was for different metrics like heart rate, speed, distance, duration, all of these things 6 weeks before one marathon to compare with 6 weeks for the next one. So I could see that I was fitter, I was faster, I was better, or not if you haven't trained. But it's a way that you can actually compare different things quite easily. So I'm just quickly going on. So the other thing that is really lovely within Python is matplotlib. So there are different visualization libraries in the same way. I think you've got Laura coming on showing you about visualization in Excel, which is just, it's just leaps and bounds. Excel's growing at such a rate. We have matplotlib, and there are other like Seaborn, other libraries that we can pull into Python to give us the visualizations that perhaps are not there for us out of the box in Power BI without having to go for custom visuals. Love Power BI, love visualization, but it's quite click heavy. So, or it may be me, but I find it quite click heavy. So we can apply matplotlib. Does Fabric let us track who made changes to Python? No. If you set it up, I haven't done that, but I am absolutely sure that it will, because you would be able to, I would have to check that for you, but I'm sure that you will. You will be able to, possibly using semantic links. Good question, though. So when we import in matplotlib, you will be able to. I'm just not quite sure how, but I'm sure you will be able to. I'll have a think about that. So when you import in matplotlib, you come out with things like you can actually specify columns. So you can say, right, okay, we can do box whisker charts. So box and whiskers are a way that you can actually see, what's the mean value, where are my outliers, where are the remainder of where's most of our data stored, and what are our outliers. So there are things like this which you wouldn't necessarily be able to create in Power BI easily, but you can use a piece of code that will then create box and whiskers for you. We also then have Seaborn. So Seaborn, it gives us a little bit more, it's a bit prettier, I think, sometimes than Matplotlib, and it's more statistical. So this way is pulling in the satisfaction levels by department from this data set that I showed you. So you can see on here, who's got the highest satisfaction level, who's got the lowest by comparing these along here, and then you can see where, even compare the outliers. So you can see HR, technical and sales, they've got the lowest. Funny enough, management are happy enough. It should work smoothly for us. Can we use the same Python code in Excel and will it work smoothly? Yes, it's Python, so it should work. I would suggest you follow Owen Price, who works
Okay.
for Anaconda, and he's very, very into Excel, and he works for Anaconda, which is a massive data science.
So basically, like if this code, what I can see it on the screen right now, and like for the charts, like if I just copy it and paste it on my Python for Excel, I think it should work smoothly, right? Subject
It
only the
should,
thing is that I need to define the data frame.
yes, you need to define the data set, and then you can create it. But there are loads, Owen Price, there are loads and loads of different, so you can see here, data
Yeah.
equals df, that's saying what the data frame is. And you should
Mm-hmm.
be good to go as long as you've got departments and satisfaction level
Mm-hmm.
columns.
Right.
But it has to be specific, just to be exactly the same. But yeah, Owen Price is absolutely brilliant. He works for Anaconda. So what you then can do is we have, so in the same way we've gone from Matplotlib to Seaborn, we also have Plotly. And Plotly is another visualization which allows you to do all sorts of things with it. So again, we've got our same data set. Oh, I've pulled in a different data set. So data set equals, and this is a built-in data set from, it'd be interesting actually for us to see if this will work in Excel. So this is a built-in data set within the Plotly library to allow you to play with it. And this creates an animated bubble chart with some different layout. And so you can create visualizations like this and press play, and then it will take you through the different visualizations. But this is using a built-in data set. So this, I would imagine, should be able to work within Excel.
I think this kind of visualization I have seen somewhere in Power BI without without using the Python code.
Yeah, you can
Like,
do this type of visualization to a degree within Power BI. Yeah.
yeah.
So it's I mean it's lots of different things. And again, it comes back to what you're interested. So on this one, so again, we're using Plotly, we're using the built-in data set, but we're using an animated choropleth map. So instead of, and this is where you can start to get quite interesting by using different maps to visualize your data within your data sets. So that gives you an idea of Python within a notebook. But what's particularly useful, coming back to your point about Power BI and visualizations is we can use an app. So within Power BI, we can create our Power BI reports, and this is quite often what I do with Excel as well. So I use Excel and I build solutions that perhaps I ingest lots of the data into BI. I've got a model, I've got a Power BI report, but I've also got specific reporting needs based on that model. And in that instance, I have Excel sheets or Excel workbooks that are fed from Power BI models into Excel, which is brilliant because it gives you that granularity sometimes. And some people are more comfortable with Excel than they are with BI. So you can, within a Power BI app, or they're now called an organizational app, you can embed in. So this is our app. And you can see I've got my Garmin Power BI report here, which is the one that I showed you before. So that's exactly my Power BI report, but I can also bring in notebooks that are being created within Python. So you could have documentation notebooks, or you could have for further. So you can actually use notebooks and show notebooks within the organizational app in the same way that you can bring in Power BI reports. So within here, you can see, so this is my notebook, and within my notebook, I'm pulling in data from Power BI reports, I'm getting information about it, and then I can visualize the relationships. So you get to use Power BI with notebooks to create apps. And then also within Power BI, which I won't go into, Fabric, we've got a new library called, or newish library called Semantic Links, that allows us basically to iterate all over our workspaces to show us who's working on what, and to do many, many different governance and administration tasks. So to sort of return to, and I'll go to the security question in a moment. So Python in Fabric, what is it, and what is Python really? So hopefully what I've been able to show you today is a basic description of how to get started with Python, what Python is, what it enables you to do, what are libraries, what's the basic way that we can use basic programming constructs within Python. How do we do for loops? How do we do if statements? What's a while? How do we define a function? And these should give you the confidence to at least start to play with Python. These are some of the things that we use it for. It's brilliant for APIs. So we have a whole library that we can use for APIs. We've got a library for visualization, a library for transformation. So there's different libraries that allow us to use the power of Python on different things that we want to do. And it can all be tied together and we can schedule it to start by using pipelines, which is incredibly useful. So on here, I've got some links to various Python resources and resources I use for some of the work that I've done. But what I would suggest you do, and if you're sort of getting started with Python, this is a really good website here to get you started, W3 Schools. It allows you, and it's got interactive code within the actual within our site. So you can see there we've got for loops, lists, all of the different things that you might be interested in, and you can check your knowledge on here to actually see whether it's correct or not. So that's incredibly useful. So I hope you found this useful, and it's given you an understanding as to why within the BI world we're particularly excited about Python, and actually it's really exciting what you can do in Excel as well. So the last question in the chat was, are there any specific security features or recommendations for securely deploying Python workloads in Fabric? I think that's quite a big question to answer in sort of a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes, but basically you need to make sure everything is protected with a Microsoft Entra. I don't think I can answer that very easily. No specific as far as I know, but again, not that I've heard of, but I'm sure there probably is, but I haven't heard anyone talk about specific security features or recommendations. Everything will be securely managed within the Microsoft Entra Azure Active Directory. But do reach out for me because it's quite a generic question if there's anything specific that you're thinking about or any specific data source or area that you're particularly concerned about. But I hope you found this useful. And if you have any questions now, please, great questions coming in. Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions now, please feel free to pop them in the chat or reach out and connect on LinkedIn. So just, yeah. Here's my LinkedIn profile if you wish to reach out. But I hope you found that useful.
Very soon. That's awesome. Thank you very much, for this great session. And to be very honest with you, I'm still beginner in Python, and you can see the comment also coming on YouTube from Christian, and so he also mentioned, he acknowledged that Owen Price, he is a master of Python, and I do agree because when I see his codes on LinkedIn, what he's sharing, that's
Yeah.
really, really great,
Yeah, well, he should be. He works for Anaconda, so he should be.
Okay. Okay, so we'll be just signing out from the YouTube, but we'll
Great.
still stay back on the Zoom. The
Yeah.
party's still not over. But before we go offline from YouTube, is there any last words or anything you would like to say to the audience? Something like motivational speech or motivational quote, not a speech, I would say a quote, that you like to share it with the audience on the YouTube.
I think what I would say to you is find something you're passionate about exploring. So for me, I had a use case that I was running Budapest Marathon, and I'd run Florence in 3:52, and I wanted to explore the data um, to see whether I was where I was compared to this time last year or this time 6 months ago. And so that I would go into the race confident that I was at the correct level or if not better. And so what I would suggest that you do is find some data that you're particularly interested about that matters to you, that means something to you, whether it's scientific, whether it's a hobby, whether it's, just something that you're interested in. And if you're interested in it, then it gives you, you're more inclined to actually explore it then. So I would definitely say if you're going to start playing, play with something you're interested in.
Okay, so thank you so much.
You're
And
welcome.
thank you, my friends, for joining on YouTube. And I'll be seeing you next month, inshallah, on the next YouTube session. So stay tuned and do let us know in the comment section of your YouTube about the session. And also do let us know your feedback on LinkedIn. So that really help us, And so see you soon, my guys.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye
Bye.
from YouTube. Bye.
Bye. Oh, bye, Christian.